Díomh agus fáilte arás to the Crazy House Prices podcast, a podcast where I help you buy your own home, understand the madness of the Irish housing market, and generally just adult a bit better. I'm your host, Ciarán Mulqueen. Today in episode 45, I'm going through the housing market news from the last week or so. So we have a developer trying to sell a single social housing apartment to the council for over 1 million. We have estate agents getting a very, very light slap on the wrist for inventing bedrooms that don't exist. We have new figures showing that 75% of short-term lets in this country are sitting empty, while homelessness figures hit records high. And we also have, very weirdly, me agreeing with Donald Trump on something. And we also have some facts and figures on mortgages and some mortgage interest rate drops as well. So let's get into it. Firstly, I want to talk about the Trump thing, and to be clear, I think he's one of the most evil men to have ever walked on earth, so I rarely find myself agreeing with him on anything, but I did strangely find myself agreeing with him on something yesterday. So he's just announced a plan to ban large institutional investors and hedge funds from buying single-family homes in the US. So he says people live in homes, not corporations, and that families cannot compete with Wall Street money. So my take is that he is definitely just doing this for the polls, as there's absolutely no way his friends in the likes of BlackRock and Vanguard will allow him to do this. There's just no chance. But it does have me questioning why we do continue to roll out the red carpet for them here. So if even Trump is willing to, even if it's just for clicks, say that allowing hedge funds to bulk buy housing is a disaster for society, why is the Irish government then still terrified to upset these funds? Trump's move kind of does prove that restricting bulk buying it's not like a radical left idea anymore. It's becoming a bit more mainstream and, more importantly, just a bit more common sense. If they can prioritise families over funds, well then surely we can too. But let's bring it back to home to a story that absolutely enraged me and many others this week. So the Irish Examiner published a report based on Freedom of Information documents, and the headline is really bad. It's up to 75% of short-term lets empty as homelessness nears 17,000 people. Here's the data. So they have briefing documents that show occupancy rates for short-term lets, so like AirBnbs, are really shockingly low. In January, the occupancy rate was just 4.3%, and even in the peak of summer, so in August, it only hit 27%. So that means that even in the busiest tourist month of the year, over 70% of these properties were lying empty. And at the exact same time, as discussed last week, homelessness figures have hit record highs, as they seem to be doing each month, including over 5,300 children. So we've nearly 17,000 people in emergency accommodation, while thousands of perfectly good homes are sitting empty 75% of the year, just waiting for a tourist who isn't going to them. And that's not even taking into account all the vacant and derelict homes around the country as well. So this is really just the definition of a dysfunctional market. So we're prioritising the possibility of a tourist over the reality of a homeless child. So I've been very outspoken about Airbnb and the likes in the past, and I've had Housing Europe housing policy expert Dara Turnbull on this podcast to discuss this, and all of the evidence suggests that the likes of Airbnb should be restricted to their original intended purpose, which was to allow people to make a few quid when it suited them renting out a spare room. The original purpose was never for entire homes to be rented out. There would be some caveats to that. So for example, like entire places that are not suitable for long-term use. Like we stayed in a log cabin in East Cork after we got married in 2019, and it was gorgeous. It was stunning. This guy just built it into the side of kind of like a mountain, and it's just a tiny little log cabin, and it was really nice. And that is what I think the best thing about Airbnb is, finding those cool little spots that, you know, it's not like it's not possible to use that long-term use as a home. You know, that's where the really good side of Airbnb is. Those spare rooms, an empty room in a house, or a cool little log cabin like that. But if you've a property that's empty 95% of the time in winter, that property should be on the long-term rental market, or just sell it. So the government does say there's a crackdown coming with a new kind of Fáilte Ireland register, but we shall see. And while the rental market is broken, the buying market is very busy as usual. So the Journal reports that first-time buyer mortgage approvals have hit their highest level on record in 2025. So over 30,000 first-time buyers were approved in the first 11 months of the year, and first-time buyers now dominate the market, making up 61% of all approvals. And this does sound like really great news, like record approvals, and it is, but there's also some nuance to that we kind of need to think about. So why are approvals hitting records high? It's because house prices are hitting record highs. Every month again, like the homeless figures, house prices are hitting the highest that they've ever been in history in Ireland, including the Celtic Tiger. They're way above where they were there. So you need a bigger mortgage today than you did last year to buy the same house. So it's worth remembering that. Also remember that an approval is not actually a purchase. So 30,000 people have the paperwork to buy the home, which is great, but how many of them will actually find one as supply is so tight? And as discussed last week, very, very few of the new built homes each year are actually possible to buy. Only around 8 to 10,000 each year over the last number of years. So while it is great people have the capacity to buy, the stat kind of does prove that demand is just still off the charts, and it's a lot of people chasing very few homes. If your financial plan is basically hope for the best, well, we need to talk. I've trusted Financial Planning Matters with my own money for years. They sort out all my pensions, my investments, everything. They're an Irish company, and in a sector where too many are just chasing commission, FPMS are genuinely on your side, which is really rare. I know personally the impact it can have on a family not having a financial plan in place, and I know we Irish tend to put off finance stuff, but please don't. Their new website is packed with tools and guides to help you get your money sorted. So go to fpms.ie. Future you will thank you. But switching up to some good news now in the mortgage market, Avant Money have announced this week that they're cutting their fixed mortgage rates by up to 0.35%, and they're also doubling their cashback offer to 2% for certain fixed term rates. This is great because their rates were already really competitive, and they are one of the few that offer really long-term fixed rates as well. Like, one of my biggest regrets in life was not taking their 30-year 1.95% fixed rate mortgage that they had a few years ago. I'm still kicking myself to this day that I didn't take that. But even now, with their new rate cut, mine would be, I think, 3.2% for anywhere between 10 and 30 years, whatever you wanted to take out, which is very good for today's market. So I'm a big believer in shopping around and switching mortgages. I think, like, it's obviously going to be, for most people, likely your biggest bill each month. And now there are usually kind of solicitors fees and stuff when you're switching, so it's important to remember that. But that's also why places offer cash back to cover that, plus a load of extra money. So if you're sitting on a variable rate with a legacy bank like your AIB, your Bank of Ireland, PTSB, and you're paying 4% or 4.5% or more, you really do need to look at switching, because being loyal to that bank could be costing you thousands of euro. Next up, the Irish Independent reported on a story that kind of sums up the madness of our planning system and what happens when your housing policy is basically written by developers. So we have a developer in Dublin 6, it's Sandford Living or Ardstone, and they're proposing to sell a single social housing unit to the council for 1.03 million. Now this one has gone really, the reel I did on this yesterday has done, I think it's on about 100,000 views at the moment. There's getting loads of shares and all that kind of stuff. So kind of is really hitting people, enraging people, I guess. But it's also like that 1 million, it's not just that one apartment. Like they want like 980 grand for other 3 beds, 820 grand for a 2-bed unit. Like the cheapest unit they're offering is a studio apartment, so like a single room, for 365 grand. It's crazy. Like, so they want the council to hand over 35.5 million for just 56 apartments. So that's 35 million of your money, taxpayer money, for 56 homes, which is an average of 630,000 euro per home. And it just kind of encapsulates everything that's broken. We're relying on private luxury developers to deliver social housing in the most expensive postcodes in the country. So for 1 million, the state could build like 3 or 4 high quality A-rated homes on their own land. Instead, we're just transferring massive wealth to a private developer for one unit. So it's just a terrible use of taxpayer money. The Part V thing in planning was designed to kind of create mixed communities, which is really good. But when it results in the state paying 1 million for an apartment, I just think that model is broken. And to finish up, a bit of a win for the consumer rumour. So the journal reports that the ASA, the Advertising Standards Authority, has upheld complaints against estate agents for misleading regarding bedrooms. So we've all seen it. You go to like view a 3-bed home and the third bedroom's like a wardrobe, but it's usually like a sitting room or whatever. Or it might be an attic where you can't stand up and it has no way of escaping if there's a fire, like a room or a bedroom on the ground floor with no windows. So the ASA reminded agents that to be called a bedroom, it has to meet strict rules. So I have to have a ceiling height. It must be at least 2.4 meters high in certain areas. Now, this isn't for every single home. Obviously, a lot of homes are built like that predate these rules, but this would be like saying newer builds, but also windows. Like, so it has to have natural light and ventilation to be a bedroom, and it has to meet minimum floor area standards. So like you can't advertise a bedroom if it's not safe. If there's a fire, this is what I say to estate agents when they give out about this. I'm like, if there was a fire, like, would you put your child in that bedroom? Would you let your child sleep in that, what you're calling a bedroom? Because if there's a fire, that child has no way to get out. There's no window for them to get out of. There's no door. Like, that has to have 2 exit points. And what if the door is opening out into where the fire is? Then they've no other way of getting out. So I would say, especially like when you're going to viewings, like, I'm not being funny here, like you could bring a tape measure and measure it out and make sure that the floor size is correct. Like if the room feels tiny, you could just give a little measure. Like the estate agent won't mind that. And if they try to tell you that an attic room is a bedroom, call them out and just make sure that they've researched it, and just make sure, say, well, have they got the planning? Can you see it on myplan.ie? Have they got appropriate planning for this attic? Can it be legally advertised as a bedroom? Because most of them, well, not most, but many don't, and they can only be legally advertised as storage. So bedrooms, as I said, they have to have 2 exit points in case of a fire. So I'd love if people made more formal reports to the ASA on those type of listings, not just for bedrooms, but like the use of AI to stage photos, putting in the wrong address on purpose, advertising way below what they know the home is worth. All these things that they're not supposed to do, but they do. They get away with it because people don't report. So please do report more. The bedroom thing is the biggest because it does affect the value of the house. Like a 3-bed is worth way more than a 2-bed with a storeroom. But please do report everything. We as consumers, we just need to take more action against this stuff. August Sinead lie on episode shut of the Crazy House Prices podcast. Trump is apparently, anyway, taking on the funds. Irish Airbnbs are sitting empty and developers want $1 million for a social home. But we have a drop in mortgage rates from Avant, and if you're buying or switching, there's good news there as well, and also the increase in the number of first-time buyers. So that's all good. Not as doom and gloom this week, but if you did find this useful, share this episode with someone, subscribe, leave a review, all the usual stuff. You can comment on Spotify now as well. If you want to support what I do and get access to bonus Q&As, you can join my Patreon. It's just €3 a month. You get the first week free, and it helps to keep the podcast going and give you exclusive access to my housing community. And of course, my book, How to Buy a Home in Ireland, is available nationwide, or you can borrow it for free at your local library, which would be great. Big up the libraries. Libraries are great. We don't use them enough. Anyway, thank you for listening, and slán go fóill.